hearing anybody say they have a strong objection to a 600 removal communication test on the well. The concern is, will that lead to long-term continuous dewatering?
Yeah, you're correct.
Correct. What I think Travis's suggestion is, as the wells they stop venting. The question is there still gas around it, or have they vented all the gas? Would it be an option for us to do the 1 hour communications test once the wells stop venting, to confirm that there is no more gas, and commit that we're not going to do long-term dewatering, but if we see that gas returns, we'll have to figure out some other option and come back and talk to you.
Exactly.
Okay?
That's fair.
As an option to say, because what we've experienced in the other wells, in majority of the wells is, once we get the wells to the point they no longer vent, and they're no longer venting gas, no longer show wellhead pressure, when we have done the communications test, we haven't seen a gas flow return. And what DNR is asking for is that confirmation test to say, it looks, smells like a duck, looks like a duck, and do one more test, okay, it's depleted. But the commitment that we won't, by virtue of any dewatering test or communication testing to show that the gas is out, we won't move to any long-term dewatering. We'll have to come up with some other option. That may mean more ORWs. It may mean more CPT testing to say, where is this gas? Because Texas Brine wants this gas to be removed. I have no problem.
I presume without doing damage to our property.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the reason I said all along, I hear your concerns loud and clear. Texas Brine is not in favor of long-term dewatering, mainly because it's a concern to you guys that it may cause settlement. I personally don't think it will, but it's not my property. I can't speak for you guys. So, Travis, that's a proposal.
And that's why Travis was saying earlier, the dewatering test does not automatically lead to dewatering. Before we move to anything else, we have another one of these meetings to let you know, okay, here's what's being out on the table.
All right.
Go ahead, Scott.
I have just another question so I can maybe wrap my head around this dewatering. With that, you're just pumping a huge amount of water out of the aquifer to pull the gas with it.
Yeah.
Because, I listened to your analogy of the ice chest in the bayou, which makes sense. It seems like the water just goes back.
Yeah.
What you pump out, how...
Here, let me explain the dewatering test. We have a well screen that the top of that well screen is just below the aquitard, just in the top of the MRAA. As that pull the flow down, the flow becomes less and less, that layer becomes thinner and thinner. When we do the test to confirm that the communications is open and what we call this dewatering test, to confirm that it's no longer got gas, all we do is we pump the water out of the well casing to get it down to right as close to the top of the screen we have. So if there's any gas there, it has an opportunity to come out and we'll say, okay, there's still gas there. What we've seen on other wells when we've done that, after we've vented them all the way down, typically we don't see any gas show up. It would be my expectation that's how these will probably respond too. But again, that's how the dewatering test would do. Is if it's done over a 1 hour period, we pump, like Travis said, about 600 gallon total. 10 gallon a minute max. Most of them won't support that much. It'll pull it down to the screen, and two things happen. One, we know the screen is open, water will flow to it because we can pump the water out, and we know how much water we continue to pump out. And two, we confirm that there is no more gas to flow in when we pump that little bit of water. Because what happens is when it gets low enough pressure, water gets in that casing and it blinds off the gas and it won't let the gas come through. It's like closing the valve. So if you pump that water down, it lets the gas come in, if there's some there. If there's no gas there, we say, I think we've got the well depleted. If there is gas, Texas Brian's commitment is we'll have to figure some other way of doing it without doing long-term dewatering.
In other words, dewatering, is one kind of dewatering, what I guess everybody wants to hear, is that will never happen. Guarantee in writing or whatever you want.
We're not going to do long-term dewatering.
I
Testing
personally
shouldn't
have
be a
been
problem.
opposed to long-term dewatering ever since it
Testing
first
shouldn't
came
be a
up.
problem. I don't see a
But,
problem.
you know, I can't speak for DNR.
Specifically, like, okay, this well out in the field here on my property.
Yes.
Would that be a candidate for a test?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this, not that, I don't really think pulling 600 gallons of water out is gonna cause any subsidence, but couldn't that water just be captured in a tank? And then once the test is over, pump it right back down the hole?
That's what Mike's saying. It's probably gonna fill in itself before you can even get the pump.
It's the Bayou example, yeah, it's gonna come
It's gonna fill in itself?
Yeah.
correctly,
Okay.
yeah, 'cause
You know, just for reference sake,
All right.
we have 2 water wells on our property that we pump continuously. When we were running both pumps for years and years, we had each pump moving a total of about 1,200 to 1,300 gallons per minute coming out of the aquifer. And on our property since the first well went in the back in the 70s, we've seen very low subsidence on our property. I mean, virtually, we've never been concerned about subsidence on our property.
that's
until
1.5 million
this-
gallons of water a day.
We're pumping about 1.5 to 2 million gallons a day of water out of the ground to make brine with it. That's the level of water that the MRAA will support. That's how well supplied it is. Okay, that's what we're doing, but I'm not saying that's what we do here. I just wanted to put that in reference so that you had a measurement of, here's what we're doing on our site. and
Bruce,
all I'm saying-
I think information on subsidence is very, very spotty. We already heard what Itasca calculated, so that's on paper. We have already heard Sterling's experience,
And it's on paper.
which is different, but that's empirical data. There's all the Radican studies, which seem to be more or less consistent with some of the things that Itasca calculated. We've heard your experience of all the pumping, and you haven't seen subsidence on your property. But then there's also anecdotal experience, people that lived around here that talk about how there are trees out between where your tanks are, back in the woods, and the highway where there were oak trees that are now, down in the water that used to be standing on dry land. That's a 60-year period. Okay, but, and then there is a difference. There is a difference. Agreed. And then of course, we also know what is happening over along the highway on Dale's property. And everybody points to a little concrete block house that's got a couple of feet of water in it all the time, and I'm sure it's been there 50 years. But the point is that the fact that the aquifer is so generous, the fact that it is connected to the Mississippi River doesn't mean that it's infinite.
Right, agreed.
My question is, are you comfortable with us doing a 600 gallon max removal test on each ORW? No more, but up to that.
I'm comfortable with that.
With the conditions
Now-
that you
With the
added
guarantee.
on to that.
Once the gas is
The
depleted.
well in the Old Brent
Just
parking
the
lot is
test.
still producing a lot of gas.
Yes, sir.
You'd have to do the test on that well, or?
Once it's
Not-
depleted.
not-
When it
not-
quits.
just
When it
test-
quits.
We wouldn't test any well until it stops
Until
venting.
it stops venting.
Right.
Okay.
Gas on, go get it.
Because the purpose is to confirm that it's depleted the gas.
All right, you got several dozen wells around here that have stopped, then you've done that test on all of them, I'm assuming?
None adjacent or in the community.
No, but I mean around, in the area.
Further east, yes.
Have any of those showed signs of, have you had to continually dewater those?
No.
Okay,
There's only 3 wells there's been a total of 4 wells that we've done continuous dewatering. One is OGRW sitting on our site by number 2 well. That well's now depleted and no longer vents gas. And then the other three are ORW 48, just north of our facility, south of Highway 70. ORW 54, north of our facility, just north of Highway 70. And then ORW 57 out to the southeast of our facility, pretty close to Grand Bayou.
So it's all high producing wells, which is kind of what we got here in the community, so there's a chance, even though you aren't dewatering the ones out on the outlying areas, there's a good chance that you will run into the same situation in here, so the solution would either be dewatering, which we don't want, or putting additional wells.
Well, I think where I'm at is if we do the test and we find that we don't, after the well has stopped venting, and we do the test and we say, wait a minute, we still got some gas there. Well, then we've missed something.
Okay.
And
But
we gotta go.
his question was, does that mean that you continue to do the dewatering, or do you?
No. I'm just saying, I'm just telling you, I wouldn't propose and I would be against long-term dewatering.
Right, so then you would follow.
Then I would
the
have to
solution.
step back and say, do I go put in 4 more relief wells, because something's changing.
So
and
that would be the solution, y'all.
What
would
other
drop it down?
options, I would have to, as company, I'd have to explore other options. I may have to go do additional CPT testing.
So according to him, there's 2 options. Dewatering wells
Or more
RW.
So that's what, you know,
So then you would be more RW.
and then, you know, it would also.
However, I think Bruce is suggesting that there is potentially a third one, which is, you know, this whole thing, since the earth is not uniform, maybe we need to do CPTs closer.
We may have to do more evaluation to know where the gas is or the gas is not.
And one other question, Rich was talking about like on Joe Sell's property, I think you already got a well on there right now?
Next door.
Okay, is that within the radius of influence? In other words, do you have to go away from her property, or can you put 2 wells right there on her property?
It wouldn't make sense, I don't think, to put another well adjacent to an existing well. I'd go do, you know, testing or do something.
Let's be candid about the flexibility that we're really gonna have, and I mentioned this to Bruce this afternoon. And that is, by the end of the year, with the class action lawsuit, you know, kicking in, all of the people on the east side of Sportsman's Drive are obligated to sell their property because they are in the class action settlement, and the class action settlement says you sell your property.
No, we don't have to do that.
You know?
No, we can keep our property.
If they take it.
We don't get a penny if we keep it.
Okay.
If I don't get enough for what I got, well, you know, if
Then
I
you
sell it,
stay.
then I don't keep my house.
Okay.
And they can't force me out of my house.
Okay, agreed. Okay.
So if you want part of
The
He's saying he thinks everybody on that side has
I-
agreed to the buy.
the